Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
And Adam LaRue. Don't hope to it. Be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back into another edition of Operation Domination. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate. Fresh off of the draft stream from the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Make sure you go and subscribe to @FFAdviceNet. My voice is just recovering from 15 hours over the 3 days of live streaming. So here we are, and we have to do a rookie draft because we got to talk about these guys and where their values are. I know a lot of people are drafting this weekend. A lot of you are in slow drafts, so trying to find that value. Hopefully we can help you do just that. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, joined here with Adam LaRue and Chase Thornton in the building. But we also have a special guest that we need to introduce. The only Jeremy Popielarz. What's up, Jeremy? How we doing, buddy?
I'm living here, I can chill for a second. The draft is over, so that's always fun. Don't need to do too many scouting reports. We can start thinking about 2027 if we'd like, but that's just Jeremiah Smith or bust. So after that, Arch Manning's going to let us down probably again. And but 2026, we have 8 players. That's about all we can care about. And, excited to talk about those 8 players. After that,
this is going to be a really short rookie mock draft if there's only 8 players that we're going to talk about. But
yeah, it's quick. This is like that. It could be a short video.
What is your take for this draft in general? I mean, it was underwhelming in a lot of situations, but I'm curious to see what your overall take is. Do you think there's a lot of value to be had here that we weren't talking about before, or less?
Yeah, I honestly think there is in a way. It's really a wide receiver tight end class. That's kind of where your value is at. The running backs really took a hit. I think that got even worse than we had already expected. We already knew kind of coming into it that it was not the greatest class in the world. And then a lot of these guys fell to day 3. And not that that's a set in stone marker, but it's a very historically proven marker that usually those guys aren't going to be super viable for us for a long period of time in fantasy. So we'll see some splashes here, but then some of our favorite guys got some pretty nasty landing spots, at least at running back. So I think the wide receivers, there's some interesting value. Again, it's a ton of dart throws. I think a lot of these guys have plenty of holes in their prospect profiles, but some of them have some good opportunities. A lot of teams ended up with 2 or 3 of these guys all on the same roster, which also lays its own landmines in that type of category. So, but again, I do like some tight ends and some wide receivers late. So I think it's kind of what we expected. Just a little bit. The draft, I think, killed the running backs really, personally.
Yeah, it's very much a fair take with a lot of them not going until day 3. Adam, Chase, how we doing fresh off the draft? How'd you guys feel?
Woo! I'm still celebrating the fact that that my Packers didn't have a first round pick, so they didn't screw up a first round pick this year. I'm loving that idea.
Just screwed up the rest of the draft, or
I was pretty pleased with how they came out. I thought they did fine. I've already had a slow draft, a rookie draft in one of my dynasty leagues, so I'm raring to go for this. Glad that we're on this side now of the draft. We can actually start talking about where these guys are and what they're going to be this coming season instead of what we think they're going to be and where we think they're going to land in the draft. This is the time to shine now.
Adam, you and I have a dynasty draft tomorrow.
Yeah, Chase is in there too. Don't sell him short.
Oh, that's true. I always forget Chase is in there. I don't know why. Chase was a late ad.
Yeah, I was a late comer. I'm not a veteran of that league.
But nonetheless, he's there.
At
any rate, no, I
fail. I had a lot of leagues like fold this summer. I was like, what's going on? It's not even summer yet. I guess what am I talking about? Spring. They all saw this rookie draft. They're like, yeah, no,
I don't want to draft this one. I'll pass.
Dynasty. I'll go to DFL.
Yeah, we're done.
I've seen some bizarre starts to some of these drafts. Is what I wanted to say before we lead in. Like I'm maybe 2-3 drafts deep, or at least like the first couple rounds have gone. Those 8 players are off the board that you brought up there, and at least like 3 of them. And man, I've seen some really, really bizarre starts. I'm going to bury the lead for our retention here. This is already going to be a short episode. So I'm not going to say what those odd starts have been, but I've seen some real weirdness. Go on.
We can cover those later. We'll get odd starts later after we have our own odds.
But not going to, give it to you right this second. Go on. Whole thing.
So with that, hopefully we'll be able to give you guys some entertainment while we go through this rookie draft. All right, so just to set you guys up, this is how this draft is set up for. It is a super flex, rookie only, 4 rounds. I set it up snake, so if you want to think about it as a startup rookie only draft, you could think about it in that context if you so choose. But basically, I had the guys randomly pick where they wanted to go. So we got Chase at the 103, we got Popes at the 104, Adam at the 106, and then I took the 110 because I wanted to punish myself through this draft and see what we wound up with, just to be interesting. So let's get that started. And we got the computer while Chase is figuring out his pick here. We had Jeremiah Love and Fernando Mendoza go off the board 1-2. That's pretty much been the consensus I've seen. I mean, as Chase says, it makes a pick. Jeremy, have you seen anything different as far as the 101, 102?
No, I mean, that's the end of the episode. That's where we're at. That's about it.
I've seen a couple people go receiver it too. I definitely not seen anything other than Love at 1. But
let me see. I have 3. Let's see this one.
I got Mendoza at 4 in one league, and I felt so insane.
I don't think it's, to be honest, I don't think it's crazy if he falls to 5 even. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's good. I'm not going to discredit that, but he doesn't offer that huge dual threat ability. Like, he's going to have to throw for a ton of touchdowns or a ton of yards to really crack the top 10, even just because of how many athletic quarterbacks you have nowadays in the NFL. So, if you prefer the receivers, I don't hate it at 2, especially at 2. The quarterback position does help you in a rebuild. If it's your own pick at 2, a receiver is going to give you a similar shelf life. And I think the 3 receivers are better than Mendoza, probably long term. So I don't hate it. I have seen mostly, like you said, Dan, that this is the chalk way of Love Mendoza. It's makes sense. But again, I wouldn't argue anybody go receiver over Mendoza.
Well, especially if you've traded up to get to that 2nd, 3rd, 4th pick, and Mendoza hasn't gone, and you're not one of the teams that's locked in the rebuild, you may not need Mendoza. You may want one of these better receivers here, or you may want Kenyon Sadiq or whatever. For me, pick 3 is where the draft starts though this year, because the consensus is so locked in on Love and Mendoza in Superflex format being 1-2. So for me, this question really comes down to, do you like any of the other running backs, good enough to take them at pick 3, which I don't, based on some of what we kind of talked about in a pre-show about where these are, and earlier on about where these guys have landed. I think it's a little early for me to want to grab Sadiq. I'm a guy that loves tight ends. I love having the top tight ends and an early tight end, but for me, it's a choice between the top receivers here. Do you like, and where do you like where they've landed? Tate in Tennessee, Tyson in New Orleans, Mekhi Lemon in Philadelphia. Or do you really feel that strongly about one of the other 3 guys, Concepcion, Cooper, maybe Boston? For me, it's going to be Carnell Tate, because I like where he landed. I like the fit. I like the fact that he gets the chance to grow with a young quarterback here. He adds something to that team that they did not have and that they will not have. I like the idea of him across from or outside of Wan'Dale Robinson. They've got Brian Daboll there to kind of shake things up and make things new again, and help out Cam Ward. So I kind of like what they're doing there, weirdly enough, in Tennessee. I hate to kind of say that too loud, But for me, after Love, after Mendoza, if I'm sitting in this spot, whether I traded up to it or whether I'm locked in a rebuild, I'm going to go with Carnell Tate there. If I'm rebuilding, you spoke about the shelf life of, wide receivers. You're wanting a quarterback or receivers because they're the longest range assets. They're going to hold their value the longest. The more volatile running backs and tight ends we get to a little bit later. So for me, it's Carnell Tate here at Tennessee.
Remember, this is the most competent coaching staff Tennessee has had since Mike Vrabel. Let's just, put it that way. So there's a lot of reasons why to like this pick. I'm with you. I had somebody on, by the way, shout out selloutcrowds.com, social media platform for all fantasy sports. Make sure you go ahead and sign up. But somebody on there came on and said that he hated the spot for Tate because, well, one, he wasn't a Cam Ward fan, which, okay, fine. Technically, jury is still out, right? Like we saw some flashes, but we didn't necessarily get blown away. But then he tried to bring up Wandale and Calvin Ridley. I'm like, look, Wandale plays a different role. Calvin Ridley's a ghost. If you think Calvin Ridley's a factor at this point, I don't even know how to help you. You're still living from like 5 years ago. But Jeremy,
real quick. I mean, like I had Carnell Tate in my pre-draft rankings, my pre-NFL draft rankings. I had Tyson at 1. I had Carnell Tate as my number 2 wide receiver. Honestly, between the two, it's a toss-up for me. I like the Carnell Tate landing spot for him to have the opportunity to be the alpha, whereas Tyson, I think, is a second fiddle to Olave until Olave bumps his head or gets tackled. So that's what kind of, tipped the scale for me between Tate and Tyson, but it's all about landing spot for me at this point.
Fair enough. All right. So Jeremy's on the clock at 104. So what do you got, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take my wide receiver one here. It would be Jordan Tyson. I really like the spot for Jordan Tyson. I actually had Carnell Tate as like my 3rd receiver. I mean, they're all kind of one. I just don't know if Carnell Tate can be an alpha. Like I know he's shown some good things in the intermediate area of the field, but he feels like T. Higgins to me. And I feel like there's a chance that he won't necessarily garner like that, at least effectively garner the elite role. And now Tyson, it hasn't been proven either. But I think there's a lot to be seen from Tyson yet. And it's a little bit of a projection with Tyson because of the injuries. The hope is the injuries are in the rear view at this point. But I do really like the spot for New Orleans. I think they're going to throw the ball all over the yard. Tyler Shuck showed that he can throw the ball at the NFL level. He's an explosive athlete in the run game. I think that offense is doing a lot of good things. They added Travis Etienne, Olave, and after Olave, there's not much. I mean, Devon Vele's in there. I think they have Jalen Polk, if you really care about that, after his injury. But I really think Tyson comes in. I think he can easily still see 100, 120 targets in that offense, in that passing scheme. And I think that if he can stay healthy, he's an explosive athlete that we haven't even seen the best of yet, due to the injuries derailing a little bit of his progression. So I know he doesn't offer as much after the catch, but that's the same thing with Tate. Like there's a lot of similarities between Tyson and Tate. I just think that we've seen the best of Carnell Tate. Like I think Carnell Tate is Carnell Tate. Like that's who he is. Like he's very good, but that's who he is. I think Tyson could go to the next level, be a better intermediate route runner, a better deep threat, as well as kind of being not the guy. Like in Tennessee, Carnell Tate's the guy. He's going to go out there. He's going to get Sauce Gardner if they play Indianapolis. He's going to go out there. He's going to get Patrick Surtain when they play Denver. Like he's going to have to face this level competition, which he's faced good competition at Ohio State. So we've seen some of that already. But Tyson, I think, will get that opportunity to sometimes see that secondary coverage because they are going to have to count for Chris Olave. They're going to have to count for Travis Etienne. They're going to have to count for Juwan Johnson, even though, I mean, he's not overly great, but like they're going to have to. So there's a little bit more for me, I think, for Tyson that we haven't seen. And again, we're splitting hairs. If I'm not going to be like Chase, that was the dumbest pick in the world. Pick your poison, really. I just think that there's a little bit higher ceiling to Tyson's game that we haven't seen yet that could be opened up with Kellen Moore and the Saints offense. So
do you think it can be opened up with Tyler Shuck at quarterback?
Yes,
okay.
I do. I don't think Shuck's a world beater for sure, but he can throw any ball you need him to throw. Like, we kind of knew that coming out. It was going to always be, can he do it at an NFL level and game speed? And I think he showed enough of that last year. Like, arguably, he had a better season than Cam Ward. Like, let's be honest. You know what I mean? Like, it was close. I mean, you could argue that. So I like Cam Ward still. It's not a diss on Cam Ward. I really am a Cam Ward fan. I have been prior to Miami. So, like, I just think that given this, and even at that, if Shuck does kind of derail, like, they'll probably be bad enough to get one of the quarterbacks next year, and then you're starting over. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not overly worried as far as that goes there.
Yeah, so I was going to say two things. One, to your point about Shuck, they will probably be in a position to draft a quarterback if things go bad. Two, the other thing I like about Jordan Tyson long term as it sits right now is that we don't know for sure that Chris Olave is going to get another contract with the Saints. I mean, we assume they probably would try to work something out, but technically speaking, you make this pick with the idea if Chris Olave moves on, at least you have another wide receiver one, which is potential after this 2026 season. So that's something else to kind of take in consideration with Jordan Tyson. So Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and make your pick so that we can move.
Don't mind me.
So we can move the board over to Adam in the meantime. And the computer took Mekhi Lemon. No surprise there, right in between Adam's pick. So, Adam, what are you thinking about here at the 106?
Yeah, so my decision-making personally is firmly between Sadiq and Price. I really like Sadiq, and I actually think this landing spot's pretty good. Look, you want to question Frank Reich as an OC? I'm right there with you. There's one thing I'm not going to question. It's his ability to get multiple tight ends in the field. Now, focusing the targets to one of them, different conversation, but getting him on the field, I'm sold. He can do that. Having said that, I'm actually going to lean Jadarian Price here. And it's funny because on our draft live stream last week, I was leaning kind of the other direction. I think, going to have him a little bit later in the draft, but once I really got my board on paper and started working through things, the first round draft capital, I think he's such a perfect fit for the role that Kenneth Walker had in this offense, not having Charbonnet start the season more than likely. Like, I think there's just a lot of things going his direction to be of the guys candidly left on the board kind of throughout, like outside of the top three receivers. I think he's the guy who has the most year one impact. Now, if you want to talk long term, I could be sold that 4 years from now, Sadiq is a more valuable asset than Price. So we could for sure be sold on that. But year one, I think Price is going to be the guy that I can actually put in my lineup. And I don't know that some of these other guys are going to be that.
Yeah, so one thing I like about Price and why I don't hate it there as far as that goes, because he is set up to have a bang-out rookie year and then for you to sell out if you want to go in that direction. I think he's very much set up in that because you have Zach Charbonnet, who knows, might not be back till November, right? And if that winds up being the case, well, I'm not really too worried about George Halani stealing a lot of groundwork. Like, maybe they give him some of the pass work, maybe they bring in somebody else in training camp. We'll have to see how that plays out. But for the most part, Price is really set up to be, let's buy him, let's sell him later on after he has a bang-up 2026. I said this on the draft stream. Like, I don't think it's crazy to think that Price outplays Jeremiah Love for 2026 and 2026 only. Like, I think that's in the realm of possibility, just given some of the mouths that are in the Cardinals' backfield, despite Love being a far better prospect and far better athlete in every stretch of the means of that, too. All right, so just got to kind of give you guys caught up here. So the computer, Team 7, Team 8, Team 9 went Casey Concepcion, Kenyon Sadiq, and Omar Cooper. So now we get the pick to me. And this is a Superflex league, but Ty Simpson was a third-round grade on my board. This was a reach of all reaches, I believe, for the Rams. I don't care that it's Sean McVay. I don't care that it's the Rams. I don't care if Sean McVay, all this PR stuff that's come out lately of like, oh, Sean McVay's really been on board the whole time. He was just playing it up for the cameras and why he was pissed off. Whatever. Even if that is the case, it doesn't matter to me. I see a third-round pick who kind of is the discounted version of Mendoza. Jeremy, you talked about Mendoza and his fantasy prospects and how they're not really necessarily the high stellar ceiling because he's not as mobile. Simpson has just as little or just as much mobility as a Mendoza, and as a result is in a similar situation where he's going to need to throw 30 plus touchdowns and 4,500 yards to be a quarterback who really strikes me as fantasy relevant. And being that I didn't have a high grade on him in the first place, I don't care if it's Superflex. I'm not going in that direction. Now, I don't love any of the picks here, and I knew that I wouldn't. It's probably one of the reasons why I took the 110 here for this rookie mock draft. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go Denzel Boston. And the reason I'm going to go Denzel Boston here, following my board partly, Denzel Boston coming into my draft process was my wide receiver 5 on the board. Now, him getting drafted by the Browns with Casey Concepcion is a little bit annoying. But here's what I think is actually going to wind up happening. Despite the fact that they put a first-round capital on Casey Concepcion and then came back to David Boston's dad, Denzel Boston, in the second round, I think Denzel Boston might actually be on the field more than Casey Concepcion, especially early on in 2026. Why? Boston is an ex-wide receiver. That's not something the Browns really have. They can go to Jerry Jeudy. Cedric Tillman definitely goes by the wayside in this whole scenario. Casey Concepcion, given his special teams, given his flanker/slot role that he's likely to play, when they go one receiver, two receiver sets, the guy I know is going to be on the field is Boston. Whether Concepcion's definitively going to be on the field ahead of Jerry Jeudy, especially early in the season, I think is up for debate. I don't love the quarterback situation of the Browns, but Todd Monken is an offensive-minded type of guy I'm not super thrilled on, but he's had big receivers in the past, and he's taken over the Browns job here as a head coach. So I think there's actually a chance we see Denzel Boston on the field more so, and they're even maybe getting more opportunities than the KC Concepcion earlier on, and he's still the number one guy on my board. So just give you guys a quick update, and somebody can react to that if they want to real quick.
No, I said all along, when they took Concepcion, I said Boston was still on the board, and Boston was actually my number 4 receiver. I had him one spot ahead of Casey Concepcion, and I liked that fit. Like you said, an ex-receiver in that offense. Right now, for this coming year, I think that Casey Concepcion and Jerry Jeudy are a little bit redundant with each other, at least in the way that they're going to be used, not necessarily in how they can play. But I just thought that the role for Boston there was going to be awesome. They were able to come back around and still get Boston after taking Concepcion, and that made me like the KC pick even more. So perfect. I think it's a perfect setting. I like your description there of why you would take it.
All right, so after that, Team 11 and Team 12 went Ty Simpson. Team 12 went Eli Stowers. Team 12 comes back with Jonah Coleman, and Team 11 comes back with Chris Bell. Now, to be clear here, my third pick in the second round would have been Chris Bell had he fallen to me, just because I like the upside and the situation that he landed into. And I think when we get into the second round of the draft, I'm looking for the most upside because I'm not necessarily counting on having a lot of these players like we described early to kick this thing off on my team for a very long time. So let me take some home run shots, but that was not the case. So I went with the next best player on my board, which is Antonio Williams. And Antonio Williams was somebody, I can't believe I'm taking him in the early second round. This is not where I thought I was going to have to take him when I did my pre-draft process, but he's been a sleeper, quote unquote, for me throughout. Like I had him ranked as my wide receiver 8 during this process because I think he's somebody who represents a misconception on a lot of people's boards. I do think he's more than just a slot receiver. In fact, he was more than just a slot receiver earlier in his collegiate career. I think he actually is a versatile weapon who can play inside and out. And I actually like his route running ability. I thought he showed a lot of great flashes despite being on a Clemson team that was offensively inept last season. So Antonio Williams really complements well with a Terry McLaurin who only lines up on one side of the field on the outside and just kind of stays there. So I really like him here. I think he's got an opportunity to perform right away. And again, it's one or the other. I either want a home run hit or I want a player who I think can perform right away. So maybe I can sell him for more value down the road for a better prospect grade for somebody else. I don't know. What's your guys' take on Antonio Williams?
I really like Antonio Williams. I had him fairly high as well. He did slide down a little bit after some of the other players. Really like the spot, like you said, in Washington. I think he can walk in day one, have a role as like their Z receiver, let McLaurin play on the perimeter. Deebo Samuel's gone. He's going to get a little bit of that screen type game stuff more so. And yeah, I think that Williams is a guy that got unnecessary hate as being labeled just a pure slot player, and I disagree with that. Like you said, Dan, I think he can play the Z role at the NFL level and be moved around the field in the formation, and I really like him. I'm sad that he's going as high as he is because pretty much in every rookie draft he's going way earlier than I thought. and way ahead of where I pick. So don't have any of him so far, and really bummed by that. But yeah, I really do like Antonio Williams in the situation where he fell. I think that was best case scenario for him.
Always love it when Jeremy and I are in agreement. So after that, we had Team 9, Team 8, Team 7. They went Nicholas Singleton, Jeremy Bernard, and Emmett Johnson. We'll get back to Emmett Johnson in a second, but I want to talk about Adam's pick. What did you go with there with the 7th pick in the 2nd round?
Yeah, I took Chris Brazel, who got drafted to the Carolina Panthers. And I just think the pathway here, it feels pretty comfortable to me. To be honest, I don't think Xavier Legette poses much of a threat. No rhyme intended. But I have not been impressed by him. I think he had less than a yard per route run last season. Like, it's been a rough start to Xavier Legette's NFL journey. I'm not a member of the Jalen Coker Hive, but there's a little bit, definitely much more competition there. I think he pretty much outdid everything that Legette did in less games last season, and was actually a pretty efficient receiver while doing it. So there's a world where that either takes more time or just doesn't happen. But I think the immediate step to wide receiver 3, and clearly this in drafting Legette early is a body type that the team has wanted, and a skill set the team has wanted in just like the athletic, big wide receiver like this. And I don't think that Tet, obviously, also being a big receiver, is a little bit of a different story, being more of the intermediate guy. Brazel, obviously, the deep threat is what's going to get him on the field immediately, the speed, the athleticism, and hopefully he can be a little bit more than that. I've certainly been burned by the Tennessee receivers in the past, but I think Brazel's a little bit more technically fine than those guys were. Now, that's not to say he isn't raw, because he is to a degree, but I think it's a different story than with the Dante Thorntons and some of these other guys, the Tillmans, what have you. So I like Brazel here, especially getting him in the mid-second, especially after some of the other players that have gone off the board to this point. I feel more confident in him than Jeremy Bernard, for example.
I just think he's more physically gifted than the other Tennessee. Like, he's bigger than Tillman. He's bigger than Jalen Hyatt. He's probably about the same size as Dante Thornton, but he's definitely more of an athlete, especially side to side, than Dante Thornton was. Not quite as stiff hip. So, and I'm with you. I mean, he landed, other than Bryce Young being the quarterback, who I don't think has the best arm in the world, especially downfield, but all in all, it's a great landing spot because he's a compliment, not a guy who has to compete necessarily for his area and his spot on that team. I'm with you. I think he is going to play early. I mean, Jeremy, I saw you nodding your head yes, and then you can go ahead and take it away with your pick.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Brazel is not anywhere near what those Tennessee receivers were in the past. Like you said, Tillman was a better route runner than Hyatt. Tillman was just slower, and just kind of his injuries and issues in Cleveland have I still think he could have been a solid receiver, not crazy. I think, like Dan kind of had mentioned, and even you had mentioned, as far as like Chris has the highest upside of this group in round 2 here. I think that he has that top end speed. He has the fluidity to handle those soft breaking routes, but he also shown the good hip fluidity and like hip drop in a way of being able to snap off like the out routes and the comebacks and the curls, and really use his speed as a weapon more than just going in a straight line weapon. So I think that there's a lot to be said here for Chris Brazel. And like, I think the landing spot's really good. Like you said, Dan, he's going to be a compliment to Ted McMillan. Coker is Coker. Like, he's a solid NFL receiver. He's good, but he doesn't have the athleticism that Brazel will bring. So yeah, I've been scooping him up right about that area in every draft that I can. I also do like Jeremy Bernard. I know you kind of mentioned a little bit of that as well. I think Bernard is a really good spot here. I've had some discourse on that player as well. For anybody that cares for that take as well. I do think that Bernard is in a sneakily good spot in Pittsburgh. I know a lot of people are like, well, he's the third receiver, but Pittsburgh threw the ball a lot. Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. Let's be honest. And that he does everything different than DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman. DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman are kind of the same receiver. So like, they're kind of eating into each other. Yes, they're probably the top 2, but Bernard's that Swiss Army knife that's going to kind of do what he did at Alabama. He's going to get some of those manufactured touches, stuff like that. As far as my pick goes, I have to even cross check here. I will probably go with. Oh, where'd my draft go? It's gonna be Jacoby Lane.
Okay, Jacoby Lane got drafted by Baltimore.
Yep. So now this is another one of those teams that drafted 2. They also got Elijah Sherratt, another player that I like as well. I really like Jacoby Lane. I was pretty high on him pre-draft. Again, I think he was about 8 or 9 for me, which is pretty high for most people. A little bit of a stiff type of athlete, but I think that his role could be expanded a little bit more. I think he's a good deep threat. I think he's a red zone threat. I think we just didn't see the best of him at USC. I really think that in Baltimore, they're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more this season. And I think we've seen that from Lamar. As long as Lamar can stay healthy, they've been very desperate for a wide receiver to complement Zay Flowers. And I think Jacoby Lane can do that. He offers something that Elijah Sherratt cannot, hence why he went much earlier, which is a little bit more of a deep threat. He has that fluidity to run those deeper routes. Still can kind of suffice in the intermediate section, but he has good hands, good reach, good length to be open, even though he's not. We'll come to whether Lamar can throw those balls, but I think he's a good heir apparent, and we'll learn from somebody like DeAndre Hopkins, who is a similar type of receiver that isn't always open in the sense of open, but is open just because of his reach, length, hands, etc. So I think there's a lot to be said and seen still from Jacoby Lane. And again, we're shooting kind of for those high upside types of players. And Baltimore's offense throws the ball enough. Like it's a misconception that they don't, and especially in the red zone. They're also going to be looking for someone to replace Isaiah Likely kind of in that. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit of a different offense. But I do think that you see a different Baltimore offense with Harbaugh gone, and I'm hoping Jacoby Lane's going to be a key to that. So, again, gives them something that Rashad Bateman hasn't yet, kind of in that type of territory. So, yeah, I mean, I'm shooting that upside for him.
Let me ask you this, because this is what I'm struggling with when it comes to Baltimore. 1, drafting both Lane and Elijah Sherratt, and 2, Baltimore dealing with X wide receivers to begin with. Like, I know this isn't Todd Monken's offense. I know this isn't Greg Roman's offense. This is Declan Doyle, who we haven't really seen call plays as of yet, but we know his background with Ben Johnson and previously with Sean Payton. My thing, though, is that through 2 different types of play callers, Lamar Jackson's been consistent on one thing, not really getting the ball consistently to the X receiver. Now, you can make a very, very fair argument. They have not had much luck hitting on that type of wide receiver. They tried to Rashad Bateman in the first round. He got injured over and over and over again, never really lived up to his potential. By the time they get DeAndre Hopkins, he's at the tail end of his career. So my holdup is it a Lamar issue as to why that perimeter receiver just can't seemingly succeed, or is it they just haven't hit on it yet, or is it that the new offensive change may change that?
I would think the new offense is going to change it a little bit. I think you've seen it from Lamar that he can hit those deep shots. We've seen it. I mean, we've seen now they've been flashes, like you said. It hasn't been consistent. But you have to remember, though, too, they have Zay Flowers, and like Zay Flowers is different. Then they've had Mark Andrews, who has been dominant for most of his career, who's now at the tail end of that. Like, I think by necessity, they're going to have to make the perimeter receivers work, hence why they took 2 of them in Elijah Sherratt and Jacoby Lane, both guys who can kind of play outside, who also will insulate a little bit on Rashad Bateman, and then they'll have Zay Flowers on the inside. But yeah, I think by necessity of the failing of an aging of Mark Andrews, who is still okay, but again, not a guy who's getting downfield anymore. And then DeAndre Hopkins, you mentioned, the age is kind of catching up to him, another guy who can't get downfield. Bateman still can, so that's going to be kind of their biggest hurdle. But yeah, I do think that it's less Lamar. I think it's more the offense, more kind of just the way that it works, as well as, I mean, it could be a little bit of Lamar on that aspect of not sitting in the pocket as long, but we've seen him start to do that as his career has progressed. So I think that just a new offense, fresh go, Lamar kind of having made this step in his development as far as being able to stand in the pocket a little bit longer and hit those throws as opposed to bailing as early as he did in his younger portions of his career. I think that would be the hope that you get with Jacoby Lane. Again, it's you're really at this point in the draft, even like say we're, once you get past, like we said, those first like 8 to 10 picks, like you're really projecting these guys to take a jump in their development, as well as like, okay, well, if the offense does this, we're going to have somebody, So like, that's where I'm at, is like, of this group, like even Mike Washington went before my pick. Like that's wild to me. Like I don't know anybody with a sane mind who will take Mike Washington. Like Mike Washington's dead. Like, let's be honest. Like you really think the Raiders are going to put Mike Washington on the field enough to be fantasy viable over Ashton Genty? Like, let's be real. Like he's going to be on the field. Sure. They drafted him, but like he's dead. I mean, for fantasy outside of an injury, like if you take him in the second round, like it's just a waste of a pick. Just trade it for like a 4th round pick. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's why I know it's just sleeper ADP, but like sometimes these guys just don't land in a good situation and they're done, especially for running backs. Like
he's a handcuff getting off the bus.
Yeah.
He's
like
handcuff getting off the bus.
Yeah. As soon as that pick was made, like it stinks. Like it's terrible. Like, I mean, it was a guy that drew great hype and like, it was fun, but like, is he worth a pick? Sure. But like, there's plenty of receivers here that I would much rather take before I'm drafting him. Like in the 3rd round, sure. Because receivers dry up quickly. I think in that territory, I'd take him. But like, it's wild to me that you would take him this high,
Well,
and I know it's sleeper ADP, but like,
but we've cleared those 8 players that we kind of all laughed about being the only relevant ones. But after those 8 players, and even within those 8 players, most of the guys we're talking about in this rookie draft, we're talking about having number 2 roles at their position on their teams at best. There are very few guys in this draft that we are talking about having the number 1 role off the bat, or even the possibility of the number 1 role. And like you bring up Mike Washington, I'm like, yeah. I mean, if you have Ashton Genty and you want to take Mike Washington so that you cover your own ass, great. But if you grabbed Ashton Genty, if you were in position to draft Ashton Genty last year or have him on your team, I don't know that you're drafting late in round 2. You might be drafting early in round 3. I mean, in a normal non-snake draft here, but yeah, we're talking about a ton of dudes who have number 2 potential on their team at best. And so do you really want to take a number 2 running back who we know cannot be or will not be fantasy relevant outside of the injury, or a number 2 receiver on a team who still can have fantasy viability regardless of scoring setting and almost regardless of situation? Number 2 receiver can still be a fantasy relevant guy.
Yeah, and that's typically how I handle my rookie drafts. Like once the wide receiver 2s dry up, like the wide receiver 2 potential players, like I'm fine. Mike Washington's a decent pick. Like you have an injured Ashton Genty, like he's probably going to be super viable for a while. That's why like 3rd and 4th round, like I hammer running backs. Like that's just, they're the guys who have the short-lived career, but they could step in and have an immediate impact in year 1 and be very viable. But in round 1s and 2, like you're kind of shooting for like a guy that's going to be good for a couple years, So, and you find those guys in the 3rd if there's a receiver that's really in that territory. But like if I kind of am like, okay, receiver or running back, similar values, like I'll take the running back in 3 or 4. So it's just an inconsistency, I guess, I see on this board that I just wanted to bring up of like when you're talking about some of these players, like it's just wild to me that there's still so many. And again, it's just a computer AI driven, whatever, stuff that's way over my head. But like some of these guys, Mike Washington, Emmett Johnson, like they're the landing spot stinks. Like they're done, Nicholas Singleton, I get, like Tony Pollard's aging, like sure, I'll take him in that territory. But like the other 2, just like, when's Emmett Johnson going to see the field? Like, I mean, Ken Walker could get hurt, injury history, but like,
but also we don't even know if Emmett Johnson's the handcuff in Kansas City right now. Like that's the other bugaboo about that. The running backs, and we talked about this earlier in the show, the running backs really fell in horrible positions. And yes, while this might be sleeper AI and ADP, I still think it's in the realm of possibility that some people are facing a board kind of like this, in their home rookie draft leagues, because you're going to have people who are just like, well, I knew about this guy pre-draft process. I don't know much more about it now, so I'm just going to go with the name that I recognize. Like, that happens all the time when he's in rookie drafts. So that you can still see boards like this go. And unfortunately, I'm with you, Jeremy, where if you're already walking into a situation as a running back where you are nothing more than a handcuff with not much of a pathway to be much more than that outside of injury, I'm not wasting a second round pick on you, no matter how good you were at my prospect board beforehand. But with that, Chase, let's go ahead and make your pick. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, well, regardless of whether it was a snake or whether it was a straight draft, if we're talking about late in round 2 here, yeah, we've exhausted a bunch of the guys that have number 1 type potential on their teams. Now we're talking about Carson Beck, the 3rd rated quarterback, possibly. We're talking about Katron Allen is the top rated running back still left on the board for the most part. It's too early for me to take a chance on any of the other wide tight ends, Max Clare, Oscar Delp, Justin Joly. So again, I'm down to looking at, realistically for me, I'm looking at wide receivers here, and I want guys that I think can step into a role that can mean something from a fantasy standpoint here. You kind of already touched on Jeremy, you touched on Elijah Surratt versus Jacoby Lane just now with your pick. And I tend to agree with you there. So I'm not all that spiked up about the idea of taking Elijah Surratt. Zachariah Branch is, and I apologize, Zachariah. I'm sure you're a great dude. You're taller than I am, but you're still small for an NFL guy. And I'm not necessarily sure I like you on that team and as a fit. I'm not crazy about it. Now, you could argue that, okay, if he's running underneath routes and he's got Tua Tagovailoa, Captain Checkdown throwing to him, or even if he's got Penix, okay, you can make that argument, but I'm still not a big Zachariah Branch guy. I didn't have Branch ranked quite that highly in my preseason ranking or my pre-draft rankings anyway. He was down at number 14 for me. So for me, honestly, this choice to me comes down to Malachi Fields in New York or Ted Hurst, weirdly enough, in Tampa Bay. And to be, full disclosure, I actually took Malachi Fields in the late second round in the draft that's already worked for me. But I think I'm going to go Ted Hurst here. I like the idea of Ted Hurst having the ability or the possibility of taking over that Mike Evans role. Now, do I think he's Mike Evans? No, he is not Mike Evans. But Ted Hurst can be an X receiver, and I think he can be that toss it up kind of guy downfield for them, and hopefully he wins the battle there. I think there is an opening for that role and for him to step into that on this team. It's a team with a lot of really nice receivers. They've still got Chris Godwin. They've got Emeka Egbuka. They've got Jalen McMillan. But I think that there's room there for Hurst to step into that role. And will he fill it as effectively and score you as many points as Mike Evans did? No, I don't think he will. But maybe that more than role last year. Is there. Right. Yeah. Well, what you got kind of last year. But I still think that there is an open role for Ted Hurst to step on the field, have an immediate impact. I think that same thing is there. That same opening is there for Malachi Fields, because I think Malachi Fields offers something that the rest of the Giants receivers don't, because Darius Slayton has been there and has been a reliable real life football player, but for fantasy purposes, it's nothing. And we don't necessarily know if they're even going to use him anymore. And then everybody else in that room, is bowing down to Malik Neighbors. Malachi Fields is going to bow down to Malik Neighbors as well, but I think he can eat on the other side of the field from him. I'm going to take the shot on Ted Hurst here because, like I said, I like the idea of possibly being able to get into that role and score you some points, do something that we weren't expecting necessarily.
He's the only one that's different. He's the only one that's different on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers field. That's the big key here. So
everybody else is either a slot or a Z.
Yeah, you have a lot of guys about the same size. Jalen McMillan is looking like he was going to be the X wide receiver. He might still be come week one. Like Ted Hurst might not take this job right off the rip, but Ted Hurst is the only unique type of wide receiver. So after that, we had computer 2 and 1 up. They went to Elijah Surratt, goes in the back in the second round. That I've seen pretty consistently. Again, there's some people who like Surratt even more than Lane, even though Surratt went later than Lane. So it's all about that battle of that outside receiver who can establish being the number 2 behind Zay Flowers. Then you have Zachariah Branch coming off. I wasn't a big guy on Zachariah Branch myself during the pre-draft process for fantasy football purposes. I think he was too heavily dependent on screens, and those gadgety players tend to not work out in the NFL. But you can also make the argument that right now as it sits, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, there's room for another guy to establish himself, especially with all the rumors about Kyle Pitts. Is he definitively going to be there come training camp, as he could be traded possibly on the franchise tag? We'll see. I don't think it's going to wind up happening, but there's still something that's talked about as of now. So there's a possible gateway for him. Then we have Carson Beck come off. 3rd round, Carson Beck in Arizona. Quarterback spot, like could be good Jacoby Brissett's, but he's holding out. Not a big Carson Beck fan in 3rd round. Who cares? Very good value pick here, I think, with Kaytron Allen for the Commanders, because he is in a situation where, look, they tried to go away from JCM towards the end. I know they brought in Rachaad White, but Rachaad White is mostly there to catch passes. There is a world in which Kaytron Allen, I think, can beat out JCM to be the early down back. And then that brings us back to Chase's pick. So I don't know, you guys want to chime in while Chase makes his pick here on any of those guys?
Yeah, I still think Kaytron Allen's a little shot. I don't know. I wasn't huge on Kaytron Allen. I just wasn't. I don't think that athletically, I don't think it's there for him to be very good at the NFL level. I think he does a lot of the good things well, but he just doesn't have the athleticism to be like good at the NFL level. Like, I just don't see it. Like, he is at the collegiate level because, you know, some players he's playing against are insurance agents. Like, yeah, he makes some moves, but like, that was the lure with Nicholas Singleton. Like, Singleton cannot read an offensive line and hit the right hole, 50% of the time. But he has the athleticism that if you can kind of get that into him, like, you'll be all right. With Kaytron Allen, he does read the hole right, and he can find these cutback lanes, and he can kind of plug. He's kind of like Devin Singletary. Like, he just gets the job done, which isn't the worst thing. But I don't see the fantasy points. Like, I feel like they're still going to have to be supplemented. Rachaad White's going to stick around. Like, I'm a big Rachaad White fan. I know he's not uber efficient, but, like, he's kind of the same as Kaytron Allen. Like, he does everything fairly well. He can pick up what you ask him to. He's better in the receiving game than Kaytron Allen. Like, I just think that this is an insurance pick of, like, okay, we can plug him in here. But, like, I think Rachaad White's the guy. Start of the season, and you're going to see some Krosky Merritt, and you're going to see some Kaytron Allen. I think it's going to be a mess. He's kind of a guy I took off my board. I wasn't super in on him to begin with. And I mean, these last 3 picks, like, I just wouldn't make either. Like, I don't like Zachariah Branch, much like you said, Dan. Carson Beck, like, he's okay. If he's the starter, he's worth that pick, even for a year in Superflex. But, like, if Brissett shows up, like, I'm not sold that, like, they're like, this is our guy, Like, I think that's kind of like, well, he's experienced. He could step in if Jacoby Brissett wants to really hold out for $12 million. So,
yeah, fair enough. I'm going to push back a little bit on Kaytron Allen, and this is partly due to the fact that I was a little bit higher on him than consensus was coming into the draft anyway. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about him being some great athlete, because he's absolutely not. But to your point of, I think he does a very good job of running with power and does have very good vision. And it's one of the reasons why he was uber efficient in college, why he had 6.2 yards per carry, why he did have 30 explosive runs, why he did outproduce Nicholas Singleton. I think he's a better prospect than Nicholas Singleton as a result. Like, I think Nicholson's bus rate, and his bus rate, my model, is much higher than Kaytron Allen. And I look at JCM as the type of guy, like, look, you were kind of like a couple week wonder, and it became clear to me that as they were playing Chris Rodriguez more and more and more, that I think they trusted him less and less and less. Rachaad White, we know what role he's definitively going to be in. I don't argue with you that this could be a 3-way mess, especially to start the season, but I very much see this as a potential possibility, let's say the second half of the year, of it being Rachaad White in the passing down role, and Kaytron Allen, who is very good in converting red zone touches as well. Another reason why they were taking JCM off the field. at him kind of weaseling his way into that role, and that's where the fantasy points could become. I kind of like the comp there to Devin Singletary, because what we saw Devin Singletary was, while we were never overly impressed by him, when he did get a good amount of touches, he was a running back that produced. They could produce like an RB12. Maybe it wasn't for an entire season, but I think in the third round, taking a running back here with this draft class, I'd be okay with it for those reasons.
Yeah, I feel like with the landing spots, I wouldn't push back totally. It's just not a guy that really excites me. You know, I think you're fair with all of that. Like, and I'm not saying he doesn't have good vision. That's kind of what I meant, was like, he does have good vision. Like, he does a lot of the things well that you would coach to a running back. I just don't think that like the athleticism, when you get like a little bit lengthier and faster edge player, like, and he saw some of that at Penn State, but like, I think once you're at the NFL and like all these guys are kind of like the upper 10%, like I could see where that 6 yards per carry all of a sudden becomes 3 very quickly, you know? Sure. So it's just not a big fan of him. I think he's efficient. I think he's good. I think he's a good NFL player. I think he's going to be Chris Rodriguez. But was Chris Rodriguez really fantasy viable for you? Maybe 1 week here or there. But like, did you really feel comfortable plugging him in? Because the weeks he wasn't, it was like 1 point because he got you, 50 yards.
Well, and that's where it would, that's where it would come down to him needing to beat out JCM. But so Chase, he had talked up Ted Hurst and Malachi Fields on his last pick, and Malachi Fields wound up falling to him in the third round anyway. So Chase, why don't you talk about that while Jeremy makes his pick? Chase, you're muted.
Based on who's left on the board, service announcement, everybody. We're not even 3 rounds in, and I'm on my third beer. So don't draft drunk, for one. Don't do as I say, not as I do. 2, this choice to me came down to Fields, based on who's left on the board, came down to Malachi Fields or really Drew Aller for me. Because right now you're left with the quarterbacks on the board, Klubnik, Aller, okay, who do you believe in more in terms of their future with the team or their possible future with the team? The running backs were down to Damon Claiborne, and I'm not a big fan of him. And I don't necessarily see a whole lot of point in taking Nussmeier at quarterback. The tight ends, I'm not big enough on Clara Delp to want to jump on them yet. So like I said, it came down to Fields or Aller. I have taken Aller again in that draft earlier that I've done this past weekend. I talked up Fields. I think he's got a role. I think that there is more possibility there for him than a lot of the other guys on the board to actually be relevant, not just long-term, but also in the short term as well. So yeah, it came down to me taking my third wide receiver of this draft in Tate Hurst and now Malachi Fields.
All right. And Jeremy, I hate you for your pick.
Love you.
I was praying he was going to fall, but I should have known the Buffalo Bills fan was not going to let him fall any further. Why don't you go ahead and talk about your pick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Skylar Bell fan to begin with prior to the draft. I really like what he offers. I had him as, and again, this is like ceiling comp. I really thought he reminds me a little bit of Stephon Diggs when you watch him. I saw, who's the other one? A lot of people were mocking or comping someone else to Stephon Diggs, and I can't remember. I think it was Casey Concepcion, which I didn't see. It was kind of wild to me a little bit, but again, maybe I'm weird, but I see some of it in Skylar Bell. I think Skylar Bell is kind of a tougher receiver over the middle than, say, Concepcion. I think that he does a lot of things well. He's kind of a discount Casey Concepcion in a way. Very crafty route runner. I wouldn't say it's like crisp route runner, but he's crafty. He gets open. He's a 3-level receiver. He can get downfield. He can run your intermediate routes. He can run the screen game. Very good after the catch. Pretty productive. I think his 6.4 yards after the catch was top 30 amongst receivers since 2020, according to PFF. So like a pretty productive receiver after the catch. Everything that the Bills are looking for. I think the Bills room is very unproven at this point in time, to say the least. Now he's similar to what DJ Moore brings. He's similar to what Khalil Shakir brings. So where does he really fall in here? I think he could have some immediate impact if I think he can outplay Josh Palmer personally. I think he can outplay the rest of that group to really kind of establish himself. Now he's similar though to the rest of those guys. So do they put a Palmer or a Keon Coleman just because they're a little bit bigger and a better or run blocker? Sure, maybe. But I do think that Skylar Bell has some upside, and the Bills have no real lock. Like DJ Moore, yes, we've seen good times from DJ Moore. We also saw bad times last year in Chicago. Like, what are you getting? Is it still what we saw last year from DJ Moore? Like, could Skylar Bell be the guy next season? Like, there's that real chance if DJ Moore continues the trajectory we saw last season. I hope not as a Bills fan, but there's that real possibility. So I think in the third round of this group, like, huge upside. Chase had mentioned it, like Drew Allar's on my radar in this territory as well. I really like him as well, but like I just think that Skylar Bell offers too much, and I've seen him go early. Like there was a draft I was in, and I literally traded a guy for 211. He also had the 2-8 pick, and I was like, 211, I should be able to get Skylar Bell. Like it's early, but like this is the only spot I can make a trade. I made the trade, and then he took him at 2-8, and I was like, you BS, because now I don't need 211. Like, gosh dang it. So either way, my own sorrows. But yeah, I really do think in the third round to late second, like Skylar Bell's well worth that shot. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with Skylar Bell.
Yeah, you and me see that the same way. So I had Christian Kirk, Jaden Reed, and Josh Downs were the main comps that came out to Skylar Bell. But I think unlike those receivers, maybe Christian Kirk, but I think unlike Jaden Reed and Josh Downs, this is very much a player who can play inside out. So I actually think he's going to outplay, maybe not in year one, but I think he can outplay Khalil Shakir relatively soon. So that's where I think Skylar Bell has a real pathway. And DJ Moore, I don't think he's toast. Like, I don't think what we got production-wise out of him in Chicago Bears is what DJ Moore suddenly is now. But I do think Skylar Bell eventually can mold into that role. And I do think when they go to 11 personnel, there's a decent chance, to your point, him being out Josh Palmer, that he could be in on 11 personnel packages this season as well. Okay, so let's talk about the rest of this board, because then after that, Garrett Nussmeier came off, and then we get to Adam with your pick.
Yeah, Bryce Lance. He is someone who, I'm going to be honest, had not been the biggest Bryce Lance fan pre-draft. But candidly, just like once you get deep in this draft, like in the rookie drafts, there's not a lot of upside to be had. And especially like the third, fourth round, like I'm trying to swing yard more often than not. Like I want like guys who I actually think have an outside shot at starting for me at some point down the line. I just don't want to draft roster cloggers for the sake of it. And Bryce Lance comes into a spot where outside of Tyson, who, I mean, we mentioned why Tyson's awesome, Jeremy did early on. We also mentioned how he could find his way off the field due to injury, and that being a real thing to like keep in mind. And we also, like, as part of that conversation, also got to some of the promise this offense has. I think Chuck, as was brought up, has a good arm. There's not throws that you're taking off the table because of Chuck. These questions are about processing and about like making quality, accurate throws at the NFL level. Like those are the questions I have with him. I think I'm not going to, he's not Josh Allen, but I don't think that I'm that concerned with having a deep threat like we talked about with Brazel and Bryce. Like it's not that type of situation. And the receiver room here just isn't that deep. There's not that much here. Like I think he's got an outside shot on these guys. Like what we're talking, we got to beat out Devon Vele. I'm not taking it for granted, but I'll take my shot in the third round.
Jalen Polk,
Jalen Polk, like not even through what should be his rookie contract on his second team, third team, somewhere in there. So it's just
he had like a neck injury though. The Patriots just gave up on him. They're just like, this is too much effort.
This is fair, but just point being, I think he's got a real shot in this wide receiver room. I think it's the type of athlete. I think that role-wise, it makes a lot of sense because I agree with you. I think the intermediate stuff with Tyson makes a ton of sense. I think Olave has been a field stretcher in the past for sure, but as someone who, in his best use case and kind of what we got out of the Saints this past season, you're moving him around a lot, letting him kind of be everywhere. So then you just bring in Lance and be your Rashid Shaheed replacement functionally. Just, hey, I'm going to go hang out down here type of guy. I'm going to have a couple big games. And, maybe you can be more than that down the line, but I think that gives you the role to get on the field sooner than later and hopefully develop some kind of rapport with your quarterback. So all that to say, for a mid-third dart throw, I'm there with Bryce Lance. He wasn't my favorite prospect coming out, but situationally, it makes sense that they drafted a lot of offensive skill position players, because outside of Olave, they did not have a whole lot coming in.
No,
and these guys are going to get opportunities.
Yeah. Look, Bryce Lance is going to have some value in 2026 as a best ball player, sleeper late. But to your point, kind of like, these big play type of wide receiver, especially in the rookie year where there's not a ton of tape on them, they do have a history of being able to hit for you for a couple of games. I'm with you on that. He could be out there in 11 personnel. Kellen Moore loves to run his 11 personnel when he feels like he has the opportunity to do so. It's a real possibility, especially with a third round pick. So I don't hate it there. So after that, Drew Allar, Cade Klubnik came off the board. Seeing a run on quarterbacks in the third round, I think, is something that a lot of people are going to see in their actual drafts. We'll talk about that maybe in a second. Max Clare comes off the board after that, and then we get to my pick. And I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to go for somebody who is higher on my board as a deep dart sleeper and actually had a decent landing spot, and that was Adam Randall. Talked up Adam Randall during the live stream while we were going through the draft. First of all, him falling behind Derrick Henry is like destiny, or it has to be. It's the only way. Like, big-bodied running back, 6'2", 235. But unlike Derrick Henry, coming from a wide receiver background, and Adam Randall's only been a running back for 1 year. So he gets to play behind Derrick Henry. He gets to teach him how to actually be a running back. If he somehow can infuse a poor man's version running style of Henry with the receiving background that he already has, this could be a pretty nasty running back in fantasy football at some point during his career. Not expecting it in 2026. But there is still a chance that he could actually be the handcuff to Henry if anything were to happen as soon as 2026, depending on how this kind of plays out. So one of the guys I kind of had on my board, an interesting prospect to begin with. Apparently the ownership loved him, which is why they took the pick in the first place. But I think it was just a destiny landing spot there for Adam Randall. After that, we had Devin Claiborne come off the board, Kevin Coleman, who I could care less about. And then Joe Fognow, I don't know what the computer's doing.
I had the same thought. I was like, what the flip?
Like, just pulling names out of a hat now. Oscar Delp, that is an interesting pick at the tight end position the computer went with there as an athletic tight end. And then we get back to my pick. And look, you guys were talking, and I'm sitting there, I'm going through the board, and I am doing everything in my power to be like, I don't want to pick this player. I don't want to pick this player. I don't want to pick this player. I want to find a different direction to go in.
Homer pick.
Ultimately,
he really wanted to make the pick. Hold on.
He did.
No, ultimately, a second round wide receiver that you're getting in the fourth round of your rookie drafts who has big playability. I'm like, I couldn't justify the upside case versus anybody else. I was debating between him and Taylor Green, who actually wound up going with the next pick. And I've made the case about Taylor Green before. I think not only you're drafting a quarterback with mobility upside, but I think you're drafting a player who could wind up playing a different position and still coming through for your fantasy football purposes. So Taylor Green was very interesting to me, but I'm like, all right, you were the second round pick. And here's what Stribling has going for him. It's not the big size. It's not the speed. It's not that he might get on the field because he's a decent blocker. What he has going for them is that the entire world told the 49ers staff, we hate this pick. We hate this player. And all Shanahan is going to want to do is fire in their faces and give him every opportunity to prove them wrong. Even if he's wrong, even if Stribling still winds up doing nothing, he will give him every opportunity to prove everybody else wrong. That's the biggest thing that Stribling has going for him. So I made the fourth round pick, unfortunately. I don't know if you guys want to react to anything I just said, but
I mean, I might just start taking Deshaun Stribling a lot more. That's a good point. I never thought about Kyle Shanahan just saying, yeah, you guys are all, I'm the smartest guy. F you. I'm going to feed this guy.
It's a great argument.
That. Yeah. We might have Mike Evans, but I don't care. Deshaun Stribling, first, second, third down. You're getting the ball. Make the play.
Go get him, kid.
Yeah, I think third, fourth round, like it's fair, you know. It reminds me of Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette. You know, it's kind of that late hype type of pick, but like that the team talks themselves into. But I mean, maybe it works out for them. But I think here you're fine. You know, like we were pushing Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette early second round.
Yeah,
I'd be fine even with Stribling in the third round. Like the third round, like you're talking like, you know, Adam took Bryce Lance, like Cade Klubnik, like Max Clare. Like Max Clare's never going to see the field. Loved Max Clare prior to the draft, but like, come on, let's be real. Adam Randall, even like, I know your pick, like it's a good pick in a way, but like he's a handcuff. Like he's never going to like, I don't think he amasses to like the heir apparent to Derrick Henry.
You don't think they're going to run 14 personnel in Los Angeles?
Maybe. I mean, who knows? Maybe he does the same thing that Shanahan does. I don't know.
Yeah.
Claiborne's interesting just because like Jordan Mason really didn't get off the ground in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And like Aaron Jones can't stay healthy. So like I'm a little bit in on him just as a pure fact of like there's probably going to be an opportunity at some point this year he gets on the field and is viable for us. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate Stribling in the third and fourth round. It's just like pushing him much higher. I'm probably not in on. I just don't buy the hype that everybody else is, you know. But
yeah, I'm totally with you on that. So like I said, Taylor Green came off the board after that. Then we saw the computer go Le'Veon Moss and Michael Trigg, which allowed Adam to take his Notre Dame boy.
Homer pick.
We're all being homers here in the fourth round. Let's go. Yeah, I think this is a really fun landing spot for Raridon. He becomes a heir apparent with real draft capital behind a tight end that's getting up there on a legitimate offense with a legitimate quarterback that is potentially getting a legitimate wide receiver here in a month. I think this is a pretty good spot for him. And I think that even early on, like obviously he's not going to surpass Hunter Henry, but would anyone be that shocked if they run a fair amount of 12 with Dobbs, AJ Brown, Hunter Henry, and Raridon? Like, I don't think that's out of the question. Not saying that's their, you know, the what they're running out all the time, but to happen, sure. I think it's within the cards. So I think in the fourth round, third round draft capital, an athletic tight end who he broke out late in his collegiate career, but that being largely due to injury and largely being due to injuries that were multiple years ago now at this point, right? It was his sophomore year and I think his senior year of high school or something like that. So I just think at this point of the draft, he's the receiver that I saw the most upside with. Ironically, Koziel was like right next to him on my board and goes immediately afterwards, but that's kind of where my head's at. I've always loved in the fourth round getting my tight end in this spot. Functionally, unless you get one of the elite guys early, then like throw a dart here, especially if you've got a taxi squad, because these late round tight ends too typically take a little bit. But it's where I found a lot of my low end tight end ones, honestly, is just dart throws in the fourth round, hit one every once in a while. You end up with a tight end 1-2 years later, and you can use that to hang on until you find one of the truly elite guys. So it's a good way to bolster a roster.
Tight ends, taxi squad, fourth round. That should just be a way of life.
Yeah.
That should just be a way of life.
If there's a running back that's my guy, it's him. If not, tight end. That's more or less like all of my fourth rounds go.
Because to your point, I even like Tanner Koziel with the landing spot that he got because Jacksonville could be moving on from Brenton Strange after a year or so. We'll have to see how that goes with their contract negotiations. But I think he does a lot of the same things that Brenton Strange does. I think he's almost as good as an athlete as Brenton Strange is. So I think that's a very interesting pick there with the landing spot that he had in Jacksonville and good value. But we do have Jeremy's pick now. He's on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to iterate what Adam said. Like, I think the fourth round is filled. Late third, fourth round is filled with a ton of tight end value. I'm not going to take one for the point of the discussion that I want to talk about a player that doesn't get talked about a lot. I haven't drafted him either, but it's a good value, noticing sleeper ADP at the moment. But Oscar Delp going in the fourth round, that's about what I've seen. Late third, fourth round, good option there in New Orleans. Raridon in New England, very good landing spot. Koziel is a guy I was super high on. And Jacksonville's a little muted because Brenton Strange is there. A lot of mouths in that offense, but like, I like him as well. I also like Justin Jolly, who would be the player I would typically take in this spot as well at tight end. So very good value this year in the third and fourth round at tight end. But I am going to actually take Caleb Douglas. You talked about Chris Bell earlier. In this situation, we also saw Kevin Coleman go before Caleb Douglas, but the first receiver they took was Caleb Douglas out of Texas Tech. Not a big name prior to the draft, not much that I put into him either, but there's a good chance that I think this guy is their true X receiver and is on the field most of the time for the Miami Dolphins. Now, whether that turns into a ton of value or not, but this is kind of the same case of Stribling, like a guy that we didn't really see as like this great guy prior to the draft coming into it, but then somebody within the coaching staff or their scouting team kind of said, this guy's better than these X players that we thought we as fantasy scouting thought was better. If you watch Caleb Douglas's tape, he's pretty good on the perimeter, getting open, kind of open even when he's not open. So I think that Miami, you're throwing dart throws, and would you take it in the second round or do you get a chance at the fourth round on the guy that they took first? Like, it just kind of seems like you're in the fourth round. You're literally the hit rate here is like 5% on this pick. So like, I'm going to take that shot like you did, Dan, with Stribling. Like, this is a guy that they wanted to invest in first. They didn't care about Chris Bell or Kevin Coleman first. Like, they wanted this guy. Like, this was the guy that they felt they couldn't wait to draft because they thought someone else was taking him. So there could be something. Doesn't always mean that that's true. But in the fourth round, you're just leaning on some upside, bigger bodied receiver, can get downfield. There's a chance that this is their X receiver going into 2026. And I mean, there's nothing in Miami as far as competition goes at receiver. So I think worth the shot here personally for me, especially red zone type of territory, stuff like that. This could be their guy.
Miami's wide open. Miami is wide open right now. So yeah, Caleb Douglas was my wide receiver 43 in my pre-draft process on my model, like all the way down there, even lower than Deshaun Stribling. Like, that's how
he had back-to-back 800-yard seasons at Texas Tech. I'm just very productive.
Yeah, it wasn't that he was totally unproductive or anything like that. It was the fact of like there's a limited athleticism ability, limited route tree, and just a receiver who projects as an NFL prospect to just be limited overall and what I think his ceiling could potentially be. However, to your point, and again, it's the fourth round, they spent second round draft capital on a dude who right now projects to be the guy who's actually on the field more. Because Chris Bell, while I love him, I think he's a much better prospect. He might not be playing the first year. We have to exactly see what happens. Kevin Coleman, I wasn't big on Kevin Coleman as a prospect either coming out. Did have him a little bit higher than Caleb Douglas, but clearly the Miami Dolphins, to your point, thought they wanted Douglas more. So Douglas is going to be on the field. Everybody else is a bit more of a projection for health or other reasons. And Miami, as an offense, is probably going to throw the ball 18 times a game anyway. So let's see what happens next year when they get a different quarterback in there. But yeah, so we got Chase up on the board. Go ahead, Chase.
Well, we're late in the fourth round and our choices are limited here. You guys can't see it necessarily if you're watching on the stream here, but Brennan Thompson, the wide receiver for the Chargers, I know he can run a quarter mile faster than John Force can drive it, but I'm really not interested in the fourth or fifth option of anybody's passing attack, even at this point in the draft. Jamari Taylor and Jam Miller, and I'm not interested in either of those guys. I'm a little wigged out that half of this fourth round is going to be tight ends. And Justin Joly and Jack Endries haven't gone yet. I would be in on Endries, except for the fact that he went to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati hates that position.
Doesn't exist in their offense.
Yeah. And Justin Joly, I like his landing spot better. I just don't necessarily know that I want to take a tight end here. So I'm going to have the cojones to do what Dan wouldn't do, and I'm going to take his new favorite running back in Kalen Black, looking at possible opportunity. San Francisco, it's obvious they hate Isaac Guerrero. It's obvious that they're not in on anybody else there who's not named Christian McCaffrey. And we all know that Christian McCaffrey is not necessarily long for this world, in terms of, fantasy wise for long term. I'll take the shot on Kalen Black here and hope that maybe he gives me something later on, and know that since Justin Joly didn't go on these last two picks, I can always spend some fab money to try and pick him up as an undrafted free agent here.
Yeah. So you're a trend starter because we have yet to hit on a running back in the 3rd or 4th round. Just putting that out there real fast. But no, to your point, again, everyone's always trying to chase down the Christian McCaffrey handcuff. Kalen Black is just as good of a shot as Jordan James does, especially on the way Shanahan has talked up.
Yeah. What wide receiver here is going to be exciting in any way, shape, or form? It's certainly not Xavier Thomas from Chicago. It's not Malik Benson, maybe. Do I want to take a shot on Malik Benson? That would be the only possibility at receiver at this point in the draft. Yeah. Quarterback, it's Cole Payton. I'm not touching Diego Pavia. I dislike Diego Pavia so much. I don't want him sitting next to guys that I like at the rookie symposium. So there was just not a whole lot of choice here, and I figured why not take a shot on a running back in a Kyle Shanahan system. So
no, I hear you. It's not a bad move. I'm just saying it would be a trend starter. So yeah, we have Bauer Sharp, and then Jack Endries does come off the board. Surprised Justin Jolly did not come off the board. I'm with you guys. Justin Jolly was my tight end 5. Coming into the process overall. So, and the Denver Broncos, well, okay, yeah, fine. It's going to take a year. So what? All these tight ends we just took in the 4th round are not going to be relevant, most likely anyway, in 2026. It's usually, again, we said tight ends, 4th round taxi squad. You're doing it for 2 to 3 years out. That's what you're doing it for when we talk about these guys. So Justin Jolly would be great. Jack Endries goes. I still think there's some upside there, even with the Bengals offense hating the position, because they do tend to have 11 personnel and do tend to have that one tight end be an athletic threat who maybe can get more involved as things move forward. Any last thoughts here, gentlemen, as we close out the show?
Yeah, I just want to swing back around and say, like, I don't know how many drafts you guys have gone through or have seen at the very least, but like this is the single strangest draft cycle that I think that I've gone through. Here in our mock, right, we got Claire at 3.9. I've seen Claire go at 2.2. We got Singleton at 2.4. I've seen Singleton go at 1.11. I've seen Singleton make it to the end of the 2nd. I've seen Simpson go at 1.7. I've seen Simpson go mid-second. It's the most, once you get past like the about where you picked, Dan, everything breaks loose. And I get the point that I would want to make about it. Just pick your guys. Like in a lot of drafts, and even I'll do this, like it's like trying to balance value, like of maximizing your picks from like a consensus type of way in your value and the guy that's at the top of your board. Just take the top of your board because you have no idea what anyone else is going to do this draft. There's literally no way you can predict anything that's going to happen. I mean, kind of like Jeremy, what you mentioned with Skylar Bell, right? Like try to come up for him at 2.11. He goes at 2.8. In this mock, he goes in the middle of the 3rd. I've seen drafts where he goes in the middle of the 3rd, but like he's absolutely going to go in the mid-second in some drafts. It's a really, really strange draft. Take your guys, take swings for real starters. And yeah, don't worry about it too much. There's going to be some gross picks.
I think that speaks to the parity of this class. There really isn't a consensus. Like I haven't really looked at most people's post-draft rankings just yet. Like, I mean, mine are in, but like, I think that there's a fair chance to like what Adam said of like kind of taking your guy, and like this is the most reachable draft. Like reaching, you're going to hear a bit of it, but like you're also not going to get too much haggling of it because like there is so many questions with all of these guys, and nobody is confident, I think, in any. I don't think anybody's speaking with their chest on too many of these players post top 8. Like I just don't think that it's true, you know. I mean, I've seen it where Eli Stowers went ahead of Sadiq. Like, I mean, and truthfully, like after Mekhi Lemon, like the draft just breaks open. Like I've seen Jadarian Price go at the end of the 1st, you know, like personally, I wouldn't take Jadarian Price where he went. Like, I just don't think that it's there. Like I prefer Casey Concepcion. I prefer Omar Cooper. Like there's some guys I prefer still to Jadarian Price despite the landing spot. So like, I see this in like Denzel Boston. Like I just truthfully don't think in Cleveland's offense with the quarterback situation, unless it turns out to be Deshaun Watson, like Shadur Sanders, like, he ain't getting the ball Denzel Boston. I can tell you that right now. Like it ain't happening. You know, like
it's going to be
happening. You know, so like it's just like, what do you look at Eli Stowers? Great player, but like, yeah, Dallas Goedert had a good year, but like he's back now, and like, you really think you're gonna have 2 viable tight ends in Philly? Do you think Eli Stowers is the guy after Dallas Goedert? Like what's that situation look like? You know, so like there's just so much parity, we'll say, I guess, in this of like, you know, you're taking Nicholas Singleton so early, but like he's the 3rd running back right now on that roster.
Even for a dynasty draft, there's a lot of future in this draft and not a lot for 2020, 2026 season.
So a lot of crystal balling is what's going on here.
Yeah. Which is going to make it a lot
projecting.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, which you're projecting, which makes it a lot more hit or miss, frankly, at the end of the day. But with good fun rookie mock draft, I think we got to talk a lot about the strategy and everything that you guys are going to be facing out there as you go through the next couple of weeks. Jeremy, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, man, and just give everybody, you know, a notification out there of what you're doing, what you're working on, where to check you out.
Yeah, I mean, FTN, I'm going to have some shorts and stuff like that. Pretty much working on scouting reports, so I'll probably be, my rankings are over there. You can check that out. But yeah, Beyond the Chalk is a Substack I started. That's probably where you're going to see most of the written work and stuff like that kind of coming out here in the coming weeks. But yeah, if you want rankings and stuff like that, that's over at ftnfantasy.com. And then all my scouting reports, you know, if there's a guy that you don't, I don't have some of these later guys, but you know, you want to know a little more on Skylar Bell, you can head on over there, check those out. Those are all free. But if you follow me at Popes_FF, used to be FFH, got hacked, so that happened. So yeah, if you used to follow me and you've watched this show before, it is a new Twitter account, so you do have to refollow me. My apologies. But yeah, if you follow me there, I'll have links to everything. So
yeah, you and me both got hit on that.
Yeah, I saw that. Everybody's getting hacked, you know.
Yeah.
The problem is they got us. They got us with like a podcast contest. They're like, yo. And, you know, everybody in the fantasy community always is willing to help everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. But I found out who my true friends were. Whoever didn't vote for me. I'm like, yeah, okay. I see. Nobody got caught by my link, so I guess you guys all fake. You know what I'm saying? But either way, by the time they got me, it was well known. But, yeah. They got us. Our niceness, they got us on that. Damn,
unfortunately, so Elon, you've screwed up Twitter. But anyway, so
he did. I will second that. He did that.
Everybody, check out Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app, and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net. We'll be back next week with more content, so maybe make sure you tune in then. And until then, everybody have a good one.